everybody. Welcome to Wednesday night lesson. I'm Trevor, if you're watching and don't know me. And as I always say before pretty much every message, I don't really want to do this lesson. I've been told before, if you want to do it, you probably shouldn't. Well, that's the good news. I'm really not looking forward to this, but so far God's not pricked my heart to not share this. So before I get started into the lesson, I want to take a few minutes, or just a minute, 1 minute, to kind of address something that I think it just needs to be addressed openly. Face masks. There's no reason this should be a dividing issue for Christians, for believers. So I think sometimes you have to look the elephant in the face and just address it. And I'm just going to do that by giving my situation, my reason for doing what I do. And I think that's really all you can do to achieve understanding with any issue, is just listen to people. So I just want to clear up any confusion about why you might see my family, my wife and myself, wearing a mask. I work in a hospital. I'm around really bad wounds, lots and lots of blood, some of it infected, HIV infected, other things. Patients with C. difficile infections. I've had matter on me that was infected. MRSA infections is not uncommon. And you know, in the operating room, there's open wounds, there's lots of blood. We're around a lot of things, and to be honest, most of the protective equipment, I question how much it really does. It's better than nothing, though. That's the point. The point is, I'm exposed to a lot of things that are really scarier than COVID to me. Yet, when I'm off work, right now, I do try to socially distance, except for my family. I do wash my hands. I've always done that, you know, wash your hands frequently. And I wear a face mask when I'm in a setting where I can't be socially distant, like going to Walmart, going to the grocery store. And why do I do that? Why does my family do that? Is it a lack of faith? Is it fear of the virus? No, it's not. And I'm not going to go into it because apparently the news has been harping on this for a long time. I do not watch the news. I do not watch televised news whatsoever. So most of my information has actually been from fellow people, you know, on my Facebook or whatever. And we all know that Facebook is not the best source of news from either side. But no, me and my wife right now, and I don't know how long this will last. It's not a permanent thing for me. But right now, we wear masks when we're around people that we can't be socially distant with. Mostly because we just think it's the most Christ-like thing we know to do right now. Why do we feel that way? The whole world's doing it. The whole world's kind of banding together on this issue. Do we really know how much it helps? I'll be honest with you. I don't think people really know, and I mean people who study these things, really know all that much about this virus yet. But it is, at the end of the day, a virus. And from my experience, what I know, not to be gross, but the less spit that comes out of your mouth, the less virus that's in there, and the better off everybody else is. So I get the idea. I get the idea behind the mask. And that's why I feel like, with my background working in a hospital, I'm exposed more. You know, I might be putting other people at risk more. I feel like it's the right thing for me to do. I don't like it. I wear a mask almost all day, way before this COVID started. It's not comfortable. But, you know, it's okay. You know, I'm an overweight American. You know, I probably don't breathe as well as I should anyways, doing a little physical activity. And the mask does not help. But that's why I wear it. But that's my conviction. You know, I'm not saying that wearing or not wearing a mask is more Christian. My conviction is it's the most Christ-like thing I know to do right now. I don't want the world to look at me as a Christian. I don't really care what the world thinks of me for the most part. To be honest, I care more about what my brothers and sisters think. Except I don't want them to see that I'm a Christian and think that I'm being selfish or self-centered. But that's my conviction. I'm not saying that that's what people think. I mean, I know it's what some people think because they've said it, but for me, it's worth it. It's worth the inconvenience. But that's my conviction. I'm not putting that on you. I never intend to put that on anyone else. It's just important to me that people understand that every Christian who's wearing a mask in public is not terrified, is not scared for their lives, is not even doing it for themselves, because I'm not going to get into the science behind it, but I can. If you message me or comment on this if you want to know why really wearing a mask, if it helps, it's helping other people more than it's helping you. It just is what it is, and I can explain that, but I'm not going to waste any more time on this right now. It's just important to me that my brothers and sisters know where I'm coming from, because misunderstanding can lead to division, and no one's come to me or attacked me about wearing a mask. I mean, good grief, I'm either at work or at home anyways. I mean, it's not like they're seeing me anyways, but it's just important that I know where you're coming from and you know where I'm coming from, and I think being honest with each other is the best way to do that. Speaking of being honest with each other, I truly am not looking forward to this lesson, and it truly steps on my toes as well. So please keep that in mind. If God tells me not to share part of it, I hope I hear Him, because I would love to not share part of it. This lesson, and you'll see me looking down at my paper, because I originally wrote it more as an open letter sort of to Christians in America. And this lesson is specifically targeted towards Christians in America, because that's what I see. You know, I don't watch a lot of televised news. I don't really, obviously none of us are leaving the country right now. I don't know how people in other countries are reacting. I only know how American Christians are reacting to everything going on right now. And so that's who this is addressed to, and that includes me, just to be clear. But the question of this lesson is, does the world know us by the things we're against more than who we are for? Does the world know us more by the things we're against than who we are for? And I'm going to start with sort of the guiding scripture of this lesson, John chapter 13, verses 34 and 35. John 13, 34 and 35. So starting at verse 34, a new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another, as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if you have love to one another. So, the question is, did Jesus travel from place to place when he was here on earth for his brief time, just serving up judgment to people he didn't agree with, just talking about things he didn't like constantly? Was he known as the great complainer? You know, is that the name we assigned to him? Was Jesus quick to put down every government official or political figure he did not agree with? No, we all know that was not the heart of his message. It was never about what he was against. That was never the heart of it. And he was against some things, don't get me wrong. And we could definitely be against some things. But that was never the heart of his message. That was never his reason for doing what he did. He was there about his Father's business, plain and simple. To offer hope to a sick and dying world, to show people their true condition, not through blasting them publicly, but by humbling himself enough to actually get right there in their space and show them a better way, to show them the Father. That takes some humility and some work. And I just truly believe there's some things that the world associates with Christians, and specifically I'm addressing American Christians. But there's also some things as Christians in America, I mean, we are American Christians, I'm not belittling that. But there's some things I think we've began to associate with being a good American Christian that are not even remotely biblical, not even remotely scriptural. Some things are just uniquely Southern. like not even all of America, but Southern. And a lot of it's just a part of our culture, and there's nothing unhealthy about being proud of your culture. At least not in theory. But I truly believe there are some very unchristian things that American Christians have begun to associate with Christianity, like they're one and the same. Unfortunately, I think one of those things, and really what I'm talking about today, that we associate with being Christian, and certainly I can tell you the world is starting to associate it with being Christian, is that we're going to make sure everybody knows what we're against. That's the bottom line. We're going to make sure everybody knows what we're against, who we are for. Maybe that'll come later, And there's some of these things that I can no longer, in my own heart and in my own mind, I cannot associate some of these things with Christ anymore. I just can't. I won't. I want to associate with Christ, period. Not some brand of American Christianity that's twisted, not liberal, not conservative, not just Christ. That's what I want to associate with. And it's hard when you live in a noisy society. It's hard to not fit in, for not just going along with the flow, but sometimes Christians can't go along with the flow. I truly believe that. Did Christ? I mean, really. And I'm going to get a little specific, and this is the part I'm not so sure about, but I hope that God will use it to good, even if I stumble over my words. What are some of the things that Christianity is associated with in America? Maybe in the whole world, but I live in America, so that's what I'm talking about. And I'm going to read some song lyrics to you that I heard 15 years ago, give or take. And 15 years ago, I was a lot less mature person, and I hopefully was a less mature Christian. I hope I've matured some since then. But I know when I first heard these lyrics, they hit me kind of wrong. I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know if I like this. But the thing is, they've stuck with me. They've stuck with me, and they seem more relevant today than they did 15 years ago. And it's important to note, these were written 15 years ago. It's not referring to our current situation, but I'm just going to read them, let them be what they are. It says, "My first allegiance is not to a flag, a country, or a man. My first allegiance is not to democracy or blood. It's to a king and a kingdom." And this is the part that stuck with me for years, and like I said, it rubbed me the wrong way. But anyways, "There are two great lies that I've heard. The day you eat of the fruit of that tree, you will not surely die. And that Jesus Christ was a white, middle-class Republican. And if you want to be saved, you have to be like him." And that's where it gets tricky. Because I know for a fact there's some people in my life, not saying people I go to church with, but some facet of my life, who might think less of me for saying this. But Jesus was not a Republican. He was also not a Democrat. But in the part of the country where I live, it's the political right. Specifically in the part of the country where I live, it's the political right who I witness this new trend. I don't know if it's new, but I'm noticing it more than ever. This trend of twisting Christ to fit their agenda. And I'm sure in other parts of the country, it's probably the other side of the political spectrum doing the exact same thing. But here where I live, in my circle, it's the political right that I see, the extreme right, twisting Christ to fit their agenda. And I struggle with that. Sometimes Christ is not within a galaxy of that agenda. I'm just being honest. He's not. It doesn't mean we can't lean more one way than other politically. I mean, if you think one side is making more sense and doing less harm and more good, then that's the side you should be more towards. I get that. And I would say I still am more on one side than the other. I'm not going to even go into it. There's some issues that I just cannot budge on, that I think as a human being and as a Christian, I will not budge on. And I don't even understand how anyone could be okay with some of these things. I'll name one out. Abortion is an issue that I've genuinely tried to listen to both sides of the argument, and my humanity, my love of the sanctity of life, I can't understand it. I can't. I don't even think I want to understand it. And yes, there is one political spectrum, one political side that seems to be more for that than the other. And so yes, that does factor in a lot of things for me. But just because I feel very strongly that I'm right about this issue, that human life is sacred and should be preserved, innocent human life especially, just because I feel so right about that, doesn't give me some excuse to be nasty or to demoralize people. I don't have to agree remotely with the position, but to be nasty or to return evil with evil, I have no authority to do that. Not unless God gives it to me specifically. I honestly don't think He's going to. Jesus changed the world of His time, but it wasn't by trash talking the people that were caught up in evil. And I'll call it evil. I'll call it what I think it is, but Jesus didn't trash talk people caught up in evil. That's not how He changed them. That's not how He changed the world. So I guess the first thing I'm noticing that Christians are against is a certain political side. And the world knows how much we're against that. I'm saying maybe Jesus would react a little differently. Another example, and this is specific again, but are we against homosexuals? Christ was never against a person. I don't think a Christian could be against a person. I can't think of anywhere where Christ lumped a whole group of people together as somehow being less worthy or untouchable because He found their condition so untouchable. And you know what the thought I've had, and I've not always thought this way, and this is Trevor says, I'm not putting it on anyone else, but what I've realized is I'm not Jesus. I don't feel like I've reached this level where I can stare into the soul of a person and see their true condition and say and do exactly what they need, like Jesus could. The woman at the well. There's lots of examples. And since I've not reached that level, maybe I'm not doing a lot of good by repeating over and over and over again about, we're Christians, we disapprove of being gay. It's kind of hard to say that because as a good Christian, especially in America and especially in the South, you're supposed to speak out against being gay. But are we just slaying people with idle words? Or are we actually making a difference in their lives? Are we just beating people with our opinions? No matter how right we think we are, no matter how much it aligns with Scripture or not, what are we actually accomplishing? It has nothing to do with whether we think homosexuality is against God's plan. It has to do with what's our attitude and our heart towards people. Do we have the heart of Christ toward people? Or is it just another one of those things we want the world to know we're against? Because American Christianity seems to be becoming more and more about what we're against instead of who we're for, and that's all I'm saying here. I'm not giving an opinion about the issue. I don't think that's what we're debating here. It's how does the world know us? Is it Christ's heart, or are we just repeating something because it's what it's expected of a good Christian? You gotta repeat this over and over. That we're against that. Matthew chapter 12. Matthew chapter 12, verse 33 to 37. Matthew 12 and 33 says, Matthew 12 and 33. Either make the tree good and his fruit good, or else make the tree corrupt and his fruit corrupt, for the tree is known by his fruit. O generation of vipers, how can ye, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart of the mouth speaketh. A good man out of the good treasure of the heart bringeth forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure bringeth forth evil things. But I say unto you, that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. For by the words thou shalt be justified, by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. Words are important. We like to say, and I do agree, that for Christians it's all about action, showing Jesus, and I agree. But words are important. Brother Ken has said many times, it's words that got Jesus killed. It was actually not his healings and actions. Anyways, I think that scripture speaks for itself. Are we caught up in idle words because we know we're right, so we're just going to repeat it? Or are we actually offering something better? And I think it's pretty obvious which is which. So are Christians against diversity? Here's another one. And this one's tough because nobody likes to think they're against diversity. I mean, we're a family of orphans as children of God. I think we all know that Christianity was not born in America, that it was born in Christ. So, but think about it. Do we welcome diversity, or do we only allow it as long as it's comfortable to us? Is it an inconvenience we tolerate up to a point and then no longer? And that's talking to myself. I like to be comfortable. I think most people do. And diversity is not just based on skin color. Yes, that's a big one. And right now, it's big to everybody. But diversity can be, I've witnessed Christians kind of slaying other people because their political views were not theirs. Diverse political views can lead to division. I'm going to get specific again because, I live in the South. I'm a Southern boy, an American Christian, and what I have seen from Christians. Now, the media is another story. The media beats Christians and conservatives down. I know that. I'm really not concerned about the media. I'm concerned about my Christian brothers and sisters. That's just the honest truth of it. What I've seen from Christians in the area I live in, just as a whole, people who claim to be Christian, I'll say that. I've seen actual name calling, like schoolyard name calling of liberal people. I'm not so concerned about your opinion about liberal politics at that point. I'm concerned about the message you're sending to the world about Christ, that we resort to name calling. And the amount that you're right on the scale of being wrong and right does not change that. That is what it is. When it comes to extremes, there's a lot about liberalism and conservatism that I think is very opposed to Christ's message. And yes, it is possible that one side is more opposed to Christ's message than the other. I'm not taking away from that. I'm not saying you can't choose a side, so to speak. As far as your voting, that's your voice. And I would never question someone's carefully considered choice, when it comes to voting and things like that. I'm simply talking about your reaction, my reaction, Christians' reaction, American Christians' reaction to people who have opinions that we don't value. But do you still value the person and their soul? Do you really? Do I really? That's the question. What I realize is neither side, as far as the political spectrums, the far extremes, is particularly close to Christ's message from what I've seen. That's my opinion. And so in my opinion, if your average Christian is starting to lean more and more, your average American Christian is starting to lean more and more towards getting their guidance from a political side, we're in deep, deep trouble. And I think we're truly seeing the beginnings of that. I really do. You can't as a Christian get your guidance from a political side or viewpoint. They're eventually going to do something that's against Christ, and then you got to decide, am I aligned with Christ or aligned with the side? It's okay again to align more with one side than another, because ultimately when you vote, that's what you're doing. And I do believe it's right to vote. I have not always done it. But I try to do better about keeping myself informed. But this is not even about that. This is just about not being more concerned with if you're right than with what Christ wants. That's what it's about. Christians these days are mad. I think that's what the world thinks of American Christians. We're mad. We're mad about a lot of things. And Jesus did get mad. Jesus did get direct with people. But I think there's two things we need to remember about Jesus getting mad and Jesus getting direct with people. First, he was God and man in the flesh. And it is possible that we've not quite reached the level he was at when it comes to discernment. Secondly, we should note that the group of people he was the most direct with over and over and over again were the religious people of his time, the Pharisees. Not the homosexuals, not the liberals, not the people wearing face masks, not the people not wearing face masks. It was the religious people he was most direct with. And throughout history, who's been God's biggest enemies? It's who's been standing in the way of God's plan the most frequently. Who's made the most noise? Religious people. I think that's obvious. I mean, terrible things have been done in the name of religion. Paul, when he was Saul, thought he was doing the right thing, slaying actual Christians, actual people doing God's will, slaying them in the name of religion. I have a feeling he might agree with the statement that religious people are God's biggest enemy. They can be. What makes us think? I guess that's the question I've asked myself. What makes me think? I'm going to use me here because I'm feeling kind of guilty about the directness of this lesson. What makes me think I would not be lumped in with the religious people if Jesus came back today? Except I think it would even be worse, because if Jesus came back, Christians are using his name. You know, we're using his name. Using his name to do things he would never do and say things he would never say. I don't want Jesus to lump me in with the religious hypocrites. And there's been times I know he would have. I'm being honest. There's times he should have. And if he were here, I think he would have lumped me in with that group. I never saw myself that way. I mean, who wants to see themselves as a religious hypocrite? But if I'm being honest, and I know no one listening wants to be lumped in with that, but it's worth thinking about. You know, we hold a great responsibility, and there could be a fine line between saying something, posting something, doing something to show Christ, and doing it just because we know we're right. And I think that's all the difference in the world. We can know we're right, and it still not be right to beat people over the head with it. I mean, yeah. If I'm out of line there, I hope God will correct me and show me. There's the age-old question that became that bracelet. I think it was 80s or 90s. What would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? And right now, I think one of the topics that people are looking at Christians the most closely on, I think the virus and our reaction to that is maybe number one. But tied with number one, I would say, is racism. That's the issue right now. People are looking. The world is looking. They're looking to see if they see Christ, or do they see what they assume of American Christians. I still believe that this dark cloud in our country right now surrounding racism, I still think God wants to use it for good. I still think there's some good that can come from this. But it could go either way, because God doesn't force man to do anything. Here's what I want to look at. If we can try to block out what everyone else is doing, what everyone else is saying, the media, the news coverage, the politicians, the rioters, the looters, if we can just block that out, which is hard to do, but if we can do that, what would Jesus do if there's a whole group of people in a nation who feel undervalued, who feel ostracized, who feel like they just haven't been heard, who feel like certain things have been allowed to go on for far too long and that people won't listen to them who can actually do something about it? What would Jesus do? I can tell you what I've seen American Christians do, and this is me generalizing, and because I know it's not everyone, but what I've seen the noisy ones do is point the finger right back at those people. Yeah, but look at these looters, look at these rioters, look at these people doing bad, and they are doing bad. I am not justifying destroying anyone's property or lives. That is evil. And I don't care your purpose. I know that's not what God would want. But we're so quick, I think, especially maybe here in the South, to turn it back around because we don't have the humility to really look the issue in the face. It's not about you being guilty. It's not about you being racist. I mean, I don't think anyone who's taken the time to listen to this message is actually racist. That's not what it's about. It's about being humble enough to say, you know what? Maybe there's something to this. I'm here to listen, and I'll seek God on it. I'll seek God on it instead of just turning it right back around in your face because of all these terrible things that are happening. Because here's the thing. I don't think a Christian does what they do because everyone else is behaving nicely. Do we want the world to know us about more from what we're against? We're against the rioting. We're against the looting. We're against the biased media. Do we want the world to know us more about that? Or to know us as someone who's trying to reconcile? That's what Jesus would do. He would seek reconciliation. I don't think I said that word correctly at all. Jesus would seek reconciliation. That's what he would do. I know he would. I mean, unless Scripture is just totally wrong and everything I'm reading right here is wrong, Jesus would seek reconciliation. And he wouldn't look at what everyone else is doing. He would look at what the Father wants him to do. And that's what I think we need to do. No matter how everyone else is behaving. Because there's a lot of people behaving badly on both sides of this issue. I mean, that's obvious. We don't have to browbeat that anymore. I'm not saying to overlook it. There's some things that should not be allowed to happen, but our behavior is not based on other people's behavior as Christians. At least it shouldn't be. Now we're human, but... Alright, we're getting close. And here's the part where I'm really honest. And I struggle with being this honest about myself. And yes, I'm on a camera. I'm not in person. But eventually, I hope to see you all in person. And if you have questions about this, you can ask me. But over the last few months, and this is not just about the race issue or the COVID issue or any one issue, just over several things, over the last several months, I have done what I think I'm learning a lot of Christians are doing, and that's having a bit of a crisis of faith. Now, my crisis of faith has not been in Jesus or in God, because I don't think we've allowed Christ to be within a million miles of some of these things. My crisis of faith is about everything else. The institution of American Christianity, a lot of the things that I've always kind of taken for granted, they've started to be torn down a little bit. And I was really discouraged at first, but then I realized God is actually using this to help me grow. And if he's using it to help me grow, maybe he's helping others as well. But it all came to a head for me because I saw what I felt were Christians, some of whom I looked up to, some I didn't know, just, in America, treating people carelessly. Now, I'm not saying intentionally badly, but just treating people carelessly. And that just didn't ring true to me. There's something seriously wrong with that picture to me. And if you know me really well and actually get honest with you, you'll know that I'm harder on myself than anyone else. I think I've admitted before, sometimes I don't feel saved at all. Sometimes I question, do I ever really do the right thing? In my mind, I think I do, but then I think about it, and I can really beat myself up. But there's one thing that I do feel strongly about, and that is that Christians, at the very least, treat people with care. And I've seen a carelessness in Christians, a true carelessness, and I won't make excuses for that. I won't make excuses for some of the things I've done either, and I can give you a list if that's what you want, but this is one thing that I just can't be okay with it. Because I believe it should be impossible for the world to look at a Christian and not at least be curious about the grace and the love that they see. Instead of looking at a Christian and just assuming that they're going to meet narrow-mindedness and hatefulness. I think that's seriously wrong. You don't need a theology degree to see that. And when all we're about is what we're against in this country, do you think people are drawn to that? Do you think people are drawn to Christ by that? I don't. And I have been guilty of that myself. That it's been more about, I have to be careful here. I've been discouraged by American Christianity as a whole, but I am generalizing. And I need to work harder at seeking out the good stories and the good things I see. But it is hard to not get disheartened. We're human. It's hard to not get disheartened. Maybe you're disheartened about politics. Maybe you're disheartened about the race issue. I've been disheartened about Christian response to everything going on. We all have to be careful. But I do want to be balanced and offer a little bit of hope here. I have also seen just the opposite. I've seen fellow believers, including some who I love and know personally, rise above their own pride and their own opinions and actually humble themselves enough to say, you know what? I think God has shown me that I was careless to this person or to this whole group of people or whoever, and actually apologize. And I think God will honor that. I really believe God will honor that because I know how hard that is. It inspires me, and I'm not just saying that. To actually be humble enough to truly apologize, to realize, you know what? I've been kind of looking at this wrong. I've had the wrong attitude. It's not even about whether my opinion's right or not. Maybe I think my opinion's still 100% right. But I had the wrong attitude about it. I was not showing Christ. And that inspires me. It really inspires me. And it gives me something to aspire to. And I really want to thank from the bottom of my heart everyone who has been humble enough to say, you know what? I don't really care if I'm right or wrong about this. I want to love people. I think that takes humility, and it's awesome. And I'm not always there myself. I get up in my feelings sometimes. I might hide them from you, or think I do, but I'm not immune to it. And maybe that's what I'm closing now. I promise. This has been too long. I'm sorry. But maybe that's all this all comes down to. Are we, as Christ's body, humble enough to let Christ work on us? Humble enough. I think that's the key. So we can go out to a broken world and offer so much more than just pronouncing all the things we're against. We have so much more to offer than that. We can actually show a better way lived right in front of these people being everyone around us, including fellow Christians who need some encouragement right now, honestly. I really believe we just have so much more to offer, and I believe it's a huge responsibility. And I believe humility is the key. What if the world didn't know Christians by all the things we're against? What if the world knew Christians by who we are for? And I would love to see us get back to that. And maybe you individually are, or maybe you never left it. Maybe I'm looking out too much. But I take Christ's body seriously. And yeah, I love you all. I'm just rambling now. Sorry. The world can know us by who we're for, not what we're against or who we're against. Love you all. God bless.